Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't, I'm ADJ, and we're continuing with History March's Hannibal series. So last time we watched, the Battle of Agner Fallinus, where basically Hannibal outduked Fabius, came up with the brilliant strategy of slipping out, by using the oxen and their torches tied to their horns trick. And just escaped. So Hannibal once again has humiliated Rome, and yeah, I'm interested in seeing more of the Second Punic War and Hannibal's exploits against Rome. So yeah, back across the Apennines. So let's see what happens in this video. Let's get to it. Without any further ado, let's watch Hannibal Part 9.
It's late summer, 217 BC. As the fires across the Aga Fallinus Valley died down after months of Carthaginian raiding, the locals returned to their burned towns and cities, struggling to bring their lives back to normal. Having outwitted Fabius, Hannibal escaped the valley. And now, there was real fear in the Roman Senate as the Carthaginian general marched north towards Rome itself. And as a fan of our channel, you should definitely check out our Escaping the Aga Fallinus Valley with his army and plunder intact again highlighted Hannibal's genius. And as the Carthaginian army now marched north along the Volturnus River, fears in Rome were reignited that the attack on the city was imminent. But despite the road to Rome being open for the second time, Hannibal marshaled his army back into the Apennine Mountains. His string of victories was not enough to secure alliances in Italy, and the Carthaginian general knew that without a firm foothold in the plains of Campania, he needed to establish winter quarters in a better strategic position. Heading back east to his old campaigning ground near the Adriatic coast was a prudent decision. Encumbered with plunder and herds of cattle, the Carthaginians moved slowly, cutting a swathe of destruction along their line of march, ravaging farms and property, collecting provisions and prisoners as they moved, unopposed by Fabius. While this unchallenged destruction of Roman lands and a prior escape from the Aga Fallinus Valley were the two latest embarrassing incidents that caused outrage against Fabius in the Senate, it was in fact his strategy that preserved the Roman army from potential destruction. Thanks to Fabius, the Republic stayed in the fight, which arguably kept their Italian allies from joining Hannibal. Yet, due to his cautious war plans, Fabius's popularity in Rome was crumbling, and his allies in the Senate found it impossible to rally political support around him. It also didn't help that, by now, news spread throughout Rome that Fabius's property and lands were spared during Carthaginian raiding of the Aga Fallinus Valley.
That's the funniest thing ever. Hannibal's like, destroy everything except, Fabius's property. Make sure that's left alone, just so people can hate him more. I don't know if Hannibal knew that, but that's just the funniest thing ever. If he did, then the man is a devious, cunning little devil, ain't he? But, man, he is just funny.
Which cast further doubts about him. The Roman general tried in vain to improve his reputation by selling parts of his property to ransom Roman prisoners from Hannibal, after hearing that the Senate would not fund their release. But despite the unabating criticism against him and demands for a more aggressive stance, he kept to the Fabian strategy, refusing to be drawn into a battle not of his choosing, and continued to shadow Hannibal. His scorched earth policy had a very limited effect, as many citizens refused to burn their towns and crops, but it did manage to hamper the movement of the Carthaginian army, which did not have a secure supply chain and had to live off the land. Meanwhile, Hannibal reached a place he deemed suitable for his winter quarters, the town of Geronium. It is unclear if Geronium was taken by force when Hannibal's terms were rejected, or if he took possession of the town after the inhabitants fled. Either way, Hannibal encamped just outside the town and had his troops repair the collapsed wall, as well as surround the town with a trench and a palisade, turning Geronium into a fortified granary for the Carthaginian army, where provisions and livestock were stored. The sick and wounded recovered in the camp, as thousands fanned out to forage the fertile plain to the west, while others pastured the cattle and horses on the hillsides to the east. With enough provisions to last until spring, in a strong defensive position, with several roads offering multiple mountain crossings into Apulia, Geronium was the perfect place to winter with an army. Meanwhile, in the foothills across the valley, the Romans arrived some 3 days later and began encamping. But the dissatisfaction in the Senate finally boiled over, forcing Fabius to depart for Rome. Officially, he journeyed to the capital to observe religious duties. However, the more likely reason for his absence from the front line was to confront his critics and explain his actions, in an effort to salvage any support he could for his campaign. While the political discussion raged on, back in the Roman camp near Geronium, Minucius assumed a more aggressive stance. As second in command, he was left in charge of the army with orders to follow the Fabian strategy. But, eager to put pressure on Hannibal...
Yeah, okay, now that a new go-getter is in charge, this could go much better for Hannibal. At least, I don't know if he's gonna give him a battle, but put more pressure, so... I don't know, we'll see how this goes now that Fabius is out of the picture for the moment.
He set up camp in the plain, from where he sent out parties of cavalry and velites to hunt down the Carthaginian foragers. Although most of the foragers escaped unharmed, Hannibal moved quickly to protect his foraging grounds by sending 2,000 Libyans to occupy the ridge overlooking the Roman camp. And just to the south, he established a temporary camp where he stationed 2/3 of his army. Eager to square up against the enemy, Minucius sent the heavy infantry towards the Carthaginian camp, while his light infantry and cavalry...
So yeah, okay, Minucius is giving Hannibal the battle he wants, right? Because Hannibal's kind of been hounding for one. Yeah, the perfect hothead that Hannibal can capitalize on, right? Because he seems to thrive on overly aggressive Romans. He's like, finally, thank goodness Fabius is gone. Well, we'll see how he does, this new guy.
Went for the ridge. This seemingly created a problem for Hannibal. Not only was he outnumbered, but he left his cavalry in the main camp. Whether he did this intentionally to appear weaker and trick the Romans into attacking, or because the horses needed resting, he now lacked the mobility needed for the clash against Minucius. With superior numbers and mobility on their side, the Romans took the ridge.
Oh, wow.
Seeing his chance to put more pressure on the Carthaginians, Minucius moved his camp to the top of the captured hill. Expecting another attack, Hannibal restricted all foraging operations, keeping the troops in a state of readiness within the forward camp. But Minucius stayed put, and after a few days of inaction, the Carthaginian general finally broke the stalemate by sending troops to forage in ever-increasing numbers each day, until eventually some 4,000 men were committed. Dispersing so many troops in the surrounding countryside, while already being outnumbered, begs the question, did Hannibal so desperately need provisions for the winter and was forced to forage? Or did he want to weaken his position, perhaps even appear incompetent, to provoke Minucius into fighting and winning a few skirmishes, with the aim of luring the Roman general into a trap once he became overconfident? Whatever the case, Minucius answered in force.
I'm willing to believe the second one. I think Hannibal definitely wanted to get the Romans in another fight, though that first one, Minucius did really well, you know, surprisingly well. So now Hannibal needs to plan accordingly right around this guy, because he's outnumbered at the moment, and his cavalry is here. We know just how strong his cavalry unit is, so yeah, well, we're gonna have to see how Hannibal handles this guy, right?
He led the heavy infantry against a Carthaginian camp, while sending his cavalry and light infantry through the back gate to hunt down the foragers. The skirmish was a bloody affair, with the Romans getting the better of the engagement, killing many of Hannibal's foragers. Realizing it was time to regroup, Hannibal marched back to his main camp. Exaggerated accounts of this victory caused widespread rejoicing in Rome. Senators and citizens alike believed that they finally had a commander who can defeat Hannibal. Hailed for his success, a law was hastily passed that made Minucius co-dictator, which was effectively a return to having two senior magistrates in charge. But things did not go smooth.
You have to kind of give it to Minucius, though. He kind of handled that pretty well. I think he gave an appropriate amount of aggression to Hannibal, but yeah, we'll see now how he does. But so far, I was expecting him to get wrecked. He kind of handled it pretty well there, so I guess we'll see. But I think now the problem is we have two guys now, and they're going to be butting heads now that they're of equal standing, right? So we'll see if that affects Hannibal or Rome at all.
Smoothly. Fabius urged caution, while Minucius wanted to take aggressive action. Due to persistent arguments over strategy, Fabius proposed that they command the army on alternate days, or split the army into two independent commands. Minucius decided to take 4 legions and establish his own camp.
Okay, it seems like Minucius is gonna go for it since there's a battle now in the next title. So we'll see what Minucius is all about, guys. I'll be seeing you then. Bye, everyone.